that is the ChatGPT moment for crypto. The first killer app for crypto has emerged that is now seeing widespread adoption, which is stablecoins. And now Wall Street is running to tokenize and maybe even financialize their entire system on the blockchain. So they're not fighting with Bitcoin. Bitcoin paved the way for Wall Street to recognize that you don't have to have tangible assets to create value.
Tom Lee dives into Bitcoin's boom, bold market strategies, and why Bitcoin could hit $1 million. Let's hear his explosive take.
To me, the simplest way to think about Bitcoin is that it's gaining traction as replacement for gold. I think that if someone wanted to understand the use case for Bitcoin, and there's many, but they're not they don't have a lot of conviction around something. To me, I can say easily it should supplant gold. And so I think Bitcoin should be, over 1 million over time. And then I kind of prescribing to the view that there's probably a chance that maybe the 4-year cycle is ending for Bitcoin because of the way institutional adoption of that thesis is taking place. And so you have institutional and essentially permanent holders of Bitcoin coming in. So should be good. So I think Bitcoin should really build upon this 120 before the end of the year. So, 200,000, maybe 250.
You think by the end of the year?
And I think it is a good sign that many people are skeptical because we believe this is one of the most hated V-shaped rallies. And we are making new highs. And instead of people justifying new highs, we have many people saying markets should not be here because the Fed is not cutting rates or there's tariff uncertainty. So that skepticism is healthy for markets.
Why is it healthy for markets?
Well, it's a sign that there's still price discovery underway because if people were all bullish in the public realm, when everyone's bullish, then it's probably in the price. But when there's plenty of skepticisms and reasons to be skeptical, that allows markets to have positive surprise. And I think that's true of crypto. Bitcoin, is making all-time highs. It's kind of silent, right?
Bitcoin could still be heading for a massive rally, says FundStrat's Tom Lee, and he's not shy about the numbers. In a recent interview on the Coin Stories podcast with Natalie Burnell, Lee doubled down on his bold forecast, saying Bitcoin might still hit $250,000 in 2025. He even suggested that BTC could surge to 200,000 or more before the end of this year, adding maybe even 250K. That's a huge statement, especially as other analysts have started scaling back their projections. Lee isn't alone in his optimism. Figures like Arthur Hayes and Joe Burnett have echoed similarly bullish targets. However, some major players are taking a more cautious stance. Bernstein and Standard Chartered set their 2025 year-end targets at 200K, while 10X Research predicts a more modest 160K. The excitement around Bitcoin comes alongside a shift in institutional interest, which Lee believes could signal the end of the traditional 4-year cycle. Not everyone agrees. Rec Capital sees a potential October peak, while Bitwise's Matt Hogan thinks 2026 will be the next up year. Despite recent market dips and a swing in sentiment from greed to neutral, Lee remains confident. He says skepticism is healthy. It keeps markets open for surprise. And in his view, Bitcoin's biggest surprises may still be ahead.
I would love to get your take on the corporate Bitcoin treasuries because we're seeing so many more emerge. Some people are a little nervous and they don't think that all of them can survive or that it might create some sort of a bubble similar to the .com era. And others are extremely bullish on literally all of them. So where are you at?
Well, you can't create a bubble because you're buying Bitcoin. So unless you think Bitcoin's a bubble, it's not a bubble, right? I think the crypto treasuries there's going to be winners and losers because there is a scarcity to it, actually. So Bitcoin is scarce, and so it's proper for companies to have Bitcoin on their balance sheet over time. And I think banks will, because banks, as Bitcoin really does get recognized in its proper place as how you move money in the financial system, then the banking sector will actually stake Bitcoin as well. They're going to want to own it, And so these treasuries are doing what other businesses will eventually do. But for them to get a premium to their Bitcoin, because of how they're executing a strategy, that is the scarce part. MicroStrategy has already proven that their strategy works because they started in August 12th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
They bought 260 million Bitcoin. Stock was $13. Now they own close to 5% of the Bitcoin network.
Yeah.
And they announced a huge buy last week, but the stock is 400. It's gone up 30 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's truly executed in a masterful way. I don't know if the 50 other Bitcoin treasury companies, or I don't know how many are. I actually looked at that website.
BitcoinTreasuries.net.
Yeah, and there's like 50 companies. Not all of them are doing treasury strategies.
Right.
But I think a handful will emerge as winners, but not everyone. If I was a computer and using AI to make policy decisions, then I would say that the interest rate is super restrictive right now because core CPI is 2.7, or core PCE, we'll get it tomorrow, and Fed funds is 4.5. That's 200 basis points real. The housing industry is getting strangulated. Mm-hmm. And the only reason both core PCE and core CPI are elevated is because of that, what they call a statistical residual way that rent is calculated, shelter is calculated. Housing is deflating, mm-hmm. but it's still treated as inflating in CPI. So the Fed is literally making a policy decision based on something that's 18 months stale. So
a surprising Bitcoin windfall has landed in the hands of UK police after cryptocurrency seized during a fraud case surged in value. Lancashire police recovered Bitcoin linked to a 2017 fraud investigation where criminals had converted stolen funds into digital assets. Over time, the value of that Bitcoin skyrocketed, leaving the police with a surplus of around $665,000, far more than the original amount stolen. Thanks to the Proceeds of Crime Act, officers were able to freeze the assets and secure full restitution for the victims. But because UK law doesn't allow victims to claim any extra value if seized property appreciates, the surplus was instead split between Lancashire Police and the Home Office. That unexpected bonus is now being used to support community safety and crime prevention efforts. Detective Sergeant David Wainwright from Lancashire Police noted how rare it is for criminal property to increase so significantly in value. It's allowed us to fully compensate the victim, with some spare that can be used to reduce crime. Cases like this are becoming more common as crypto continues to fluctuate wildly. From the UK to the US, law enforcement is adapting to a digital world, whether seizing Bitcoin from the dark web criminals or exposing crypto scams wrapped in religious promises. If you have been watching so far, thank you so much for watching. And do not forget to subscribe to Bitcoin Zella for daily news all for free. That's all for today's video. Until next time.